Sorry about that. Mic was not on. We are moving into the 2027 capital projects discussion, and we'd like to invite our Director of Operations to introduce this topic to us. And maybe Chris Holbeck first. Is that correct? Our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Good afternoon, Council. I brought forward some questions regarding the 2027 capital projects, two of our major infrastructure capital projects for 2027. 10th Street Rehabilitation Project and the McLeod Landing Phase 3 projects. They were approved as part of the 2026 capital budget as a forecast, but I need to do a few things to kind of get ahead of these projects because they do involve debentures. So my submission today was just to try to get firming up how we're funding both projects. The first one is 10th Street Rehabilitation Project. This one is potentially being funded 50% by debenture and 50% by capital reserves. And the estimated cost of this project currently is $4 million. The reserve funding that is committed to date and that we have saved for this project for our 50% of it is $1.4 million. And we have allocated another $600,000 to be transferred to that reserve out of our 2026 operating budget. So per my submission, the town's reserve funding for that project of $2 million is funded. And the other 50% would come from debenture funding. And we'll get into some details about debentures and things like that coming up. But my question for council was, if we were considering or contemplating a local improvement tax on this project, because every now and again we throw around that maybe we could get some money, up doing these improvements via taxing the people who benefit from this project. So I've put together a submission that Miranda's going to put online. Sorry, your TVs don't work, so you may have to turn your heads, but I'll just kind of go over what I put in the submission in general for you guys. So the submission says a local improvement is a project that council considers to be of greater benefit to a specific part of a community rather than the whole town. As a result, these projects are paid for in whole or in part by a tax imposed on the properties that are affected by that project. So local improvements can be initiated two ways. So the property owners can petition for a local improvement. So there's a certain stream and procedure that goes when it's property owner led. We rarely see those. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. The other way that a local improvement can be initiated is through the town implementing or initiating a local improvement via capital budget or departmental requests. So the one that we are talking about now, can you go to the next page, Miranda? Sorry. No, that's not even, can you go up a little? No, maybe it's okay, it's okay, sorry. So you'll see at oh, if you can see it, town-led initiative. So all proposed local improvement projects require council's review and approval. Projects should be noted as funded via local improvement taxes during the capital budget process. So ideally, when we would bring you capital budget, we would say we would like this project to be funded via reserves, via debenture, and via local improvement tax. And we would present to council at that point the project and the portion of it that we would like funded via local improvement tax, and which properties are affected. There would be a map, there'd be a whole lot of things. It's an overall plan. So if council would be in favor of funding a portion or all of that, no, not usually all, a portion of that project via local improvement tax, then it would come back to administration and we would send out a notice of intention letter to any of the affected property owners that would be affected by this local improvement. And within that notice of intention letter, there's a local improvement plan. We would talk about the type and the scope of the work that we're proposing and the cost of the project for each of the affected property owners. So the process goes, we send out that notice of intention, and affected citizens have 30 days from the mailing date of that notice to appeal through a petition against it. So if you can go to the next page, Miranda, sorry. Oh, apparently that's going to be that. So we would send out the notice of intention. If the property owners were not in favor of the local improvement, they would petition against it. And then it would come back to council, and I guess council could decide if they would rather not have a local improvement and we would fund it another way, like more reserves or a higher debenture. So that's kind of how the local improvement tax grows. So normally we rarely see them come from the public. We usually initiate them ourselves as a town. I don't think I've seen one here since I've worked here, which is 12 years now. We've never had one in place. So this was the question that I had, because we kind of throw this around talking about it, maybe a local improvement. We could do one on the 10th Street project. So I just kind of want to get council's ideas on local improvements on this project specifically, and maybe in general local improvement taxes on some of these rehabilitation projects for existing infrastructure. So that's where we'll start.
All right, for those newer to council, this discussion has had a few times. I think Councilor Orr, during your time on council, we've had some big discussions on it. Councilor Patience, I think you've done this a few times in the town of Fort Macleod while on your council at that time, correct? Not here. No local improvements when you were on council?
Not that I can recall.
Okay.
In this particular case, where we would be putting infrastructure that wasn't existing, which is a bit of a variation. You know, when we talk about sidewalks on 6th Avenue, for instance, there's another issue where we're putting in new infrastructure that wasn't existing when homes were purchased or the properties were purchased. So, no, not in my time here. Several times in other municipalities, we've certainly done it for the same type of reason.
So we've had some discussion, and I think it's always a debate who and how much and what if. So we can have some open dialogue. Does anyone want to share some thoughts on a local improvement tax for the street of 10th? I believe it's from 1st to 5th, correct? Is it 4 blocks? Yeah. Councillor Monteith.
General principles, I'm against it. Specifically on 10th, I'm against it. I don't know how we can suddenly determine that 10th Street we should do this when we didn't do it on 17th. We haven't done it on others. Like, why are we treating this differently than we did the others? And the other thing is, the nature of 10th Street is people are not going to have a lot of extra money to apply to this. So in my mind, we're wasting our time.
Okay, that's position, Councillor Orr.
Though there will always be the question or the rationale that, well, we've never done it before, so why should we start now? And so that to me is something to consider. But if you follow that line of thinking, of course, you'll never have an improvement levy because there's always going to be a first time. Is this the right project for there to be the first time? I don't know. That's up for discussion and debate. But as I look at this, I just think that we need to have some sort of a standard or policy where we either for whatever reasons we're never going to have an improvement levy, or if certain circumstances exist, then we are going to have it. And depending on the project, we might vary the amount of that that levy, depending on the services that are going to be provided. I just feel like there needs to be some decisions made on it. It seems like this is an issue always just kicked down the road, when there perhaps are situations where it's very justifiable to have to have an improvement levy. The amount, again, is something to be set, but it just seems like we just keep kicking this down the road when in reality, there are situations when an improvement levy should be there. And I don't know what those parameters are at this point, but we can jump right into 10th Street and say, well, not this one. Well, and in 2 or 3 years, we're at the same place again because we're just assessing it on an individual or a project-specific basis, and we haven't really determined the overall application. So for example, are we looking at, do we have an improvement levy if it's services beyond the normal services? Like maybe we have the standard that everyone in town is entitled to have a paved street and sidewalks, and there'll be no improvement levy for that kind of work. But if there are other things that are being done and it's kind of beyond the norm, is that when an improvement levy should be put in? Or maybe, like Councillor Patience said, they bought those properties, individuals bought properties, they were at a certain level, that's what they bought. And now we go in and improve those properties by doing work that wasn't done before. Is that the standard that we, apply the levy in that situation? And again, the first time we do it, maybe the levy is really very, very reasonable. It's very low and that would address somewhat the inequity that was pointed out that, well, it wasn't done before, but it's doing now. So maybe we introduce it, but it seems to me like given so many communities that use improvement levy that there should be a start. We should have some criteria and make that first start. Whether it's this project or another one, but I just feel like we need to have some standards and assess that and come up with a plan for when an improvement levy is going to be levied and then some mechanism to.
So, Councillor, if I may, what would you recommend on 10th then? What would be your position?
See, here we are then, we're jumping right to this specific issue rather than
The
looking
ask
generally
from
at the-
administration today is regarding 10th, so I'm just trying to get a sense. If you have thoughts, if we should pursue it on 10th or if we should instead leave 10th and focus on the policy.
Well, again, Mayor, that's the very thing that brings us to this again and again. After 8 years, that's what we do. We look at this specific project and we never really look at whether or not.
I think to your argument, you have to start somewhere. So if we want to start and you think 10th is a candidate we should start on, what would it look like in your mind if we were to do it? Do you have a number in mind? Should it
Do I have a number?
20%?
You're asking me about, let's jump to step
Yeah,
15
Yeah, we
when we
are.
haven't looked at number 1 yet.
yeah.
No, so I'm still back at number 1. As a
Okay.
council, we need to look at whether or not,
Okay.
what are the criteria that we are going to do this?
Okay.
Not, are we going to do this for this project or not? That's way down the road.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else? Councillor Patience?
So, one of these blocks has sidewalk on one side, or is it two? Just wanna
I'd have to
clear-
check to verify, but I think there's 2 blocks that have on one side of the street sidewalk.
And that would be on the south side, correct?
Okay, so Chris pointed out that there's two ways in a local improvement tax can be applied, either resident-driven or municipally driven. And 10th Street is a really good case, actually, because the residents could have certainly petitioned us years ago to put a sidewalk on one or both sides of the street, because there is none there, which is a bit of a safety issue. If we've got kids on that street, parents trying to walk to get to the main avenues to get downtown, that kind of a thing. I'm sort of surprised that they never have, but again, it's not a high income area typically, and I don't say that negatively. So looking at this, I think from a safety perspective, and I don't disagree with David, by the way, that we should have some type of a policy, and typically it would apply to areas where we're putting in infrastructure that wasn't previously there in existing subdivisions. And it's as simple as that, right? If we're adding to the value of the properties by adding infrastructure that wasn't there at the time of the lot purchases, which is fairly simple premise. No, this one is a bit more of a challenge because I do think from a safety perspective, we need to have a sidewalk on at least one side of the street. And that's becoming more common even in new subdivisions. I don't say I like it. I don't. I prefer a sidewalk on both sides. So the challenge is in applying an LIT, and you know I'm a proponent of it here, is if we just put it on one side at the town's dime for, in terms of just public safety and the ability of pedestrian movement, then how do we manage the north side that has none and never had any? So from my perspective, I agree with David. A, I think we need a policy. And B, I think we need to at least have one side of that street with a sidewalk. But I think if the residents on the other side of the street also want a sidewalk, I think that we could and should approach them and say, look, if you're interested, would you, because you have to set Chris, I don't believe there's any stringent percentage of petitioners that are required to make something like this go or not go. And I know in the past, in municipalities I've been in, it's been 60%, 67%. There has to typically be a large number in favor because then it's imposed upon everyone within that area, right? So in this case, I might suggest that we install the sidewalk on the remaining 3 blocks of the north side to complete it and petition those on, on the south side, and petition those on the north side to say, we put in a sidewalk here, and I believe, Brennan, the number you gave was $5,000 a lot for a sidewalk when I asked previously about this.
I'd have to look into that again. Sorry, Sean, I'm not sure.
No, that's no, but just use that as an example, that we petition and say, if you want a sidewalk on the north side of this street for those residents, would you be willing to pay half of the project amount, which would be $2,500 if that's the number, or say a 25-year period, which is $100 a year basically. The reason I say that is because it does improve that property, and it certainly improves the resale of the property as well. Had there been no sidewalks on either side, I would suggest we put an LIT on both sides. But we do have a bit of an issue there where there should have been originally a sidewalk on at least one side. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, if looking at GIS, I think there's 2 blocks on the south side that have sidewalks and then 6 that don't. So, but either way, you're doing deep services, chances are those sidewalks are going to come out. You're going to be replacing those because you're running services to the house and so on and so forth. So I think the sidewalks that are there are essentially, are any of the streets that I've seen redone, and Brendan can confirm that their sidewalks didn't survive.
That is the initial kind of perspective from our engineers when we went down and walked that area, and said there is, like you said, the 2 blocks of sidewalks, but in most cases to dig down to rebuild the base of the road, all those kinds of things are most likely going to have to be replaced anyway.
No, and I understand that. In that case, though, we are replacing infrastructure that was there, unlike 17th, where I don't think any new infrastructure was installed. It was just repaired, repaved. Right. Yeah. So there is a difference there, I think. Anyway, thinking about this prior to the meeting, I do think that those other 2 blocks should be sidewalks, so at least that area has sidewalk on one side for safe pedestrian travel. The other side wants the sidewalk. I think that from my own perspective, I'd be happy if they kicked in half of the cost of that sidewalk. Otherwise, it's simply a curb.
Yeah, either way, you need curb on both sides. So, because if you look at the north side, it's a pretty messy street with driveways and such all over the place. So it's a big redo. Bottom line on the tax improve, or the local improvement tax, it's not to develop a policy, we would have to um, have a full discussion on that. I think some of the things that need to be a factor is that property value assessments are likely going to go up. So you might have a brand new street, new sidewalks, and all of a sudden your assessment goes up 20, 30,000 as well. You never know how much that is. So I think there's that factor involved when we're discussing some of these things. Rough number I took, 4 million. If we said a local improvement tax would cover a quarter, then it would work out to over 20 years, $700 a year. That's a quarter of the construction costs being covered. So I think those are the things that we're going to need to think about. Like, what is the number? How is the number? When are they approaching? Because I think we've had 2 other areas approach us in the past 4 to 8 years, and I think the town always came back with local improvement tax is required to cover 75% of the cost. Which, in my mind, you may not even have a conversation because it's not going anywhere. It's not going to happen. I think that was airport properties, and the other one was for the adding the street from the auction market and around. I think the person who owned that land wanted the town to put the streets in, and the town said, okay, you cover 75 and we'll do it. So then in the end, I think that one was a whole different one because it's new streets, and perhaps it could have been done on a local improvement tax. I like the idea of local improvement tax. I think there needs to be some of that. It's the percentage that is going to be the challenge. And when. When is it triggered and how much?
If I might, you asked me if we'd ever used one before, and actually I do remember now a case that we used it when we owned the electric utility, when we redid 2 or 3 blocks, and I can't remember if it was the 18th or 20th. 18th, yeah. And so we were going to put overhead power lines in, and it was me that actually pushed to say, like, let's go underground. Like, the overheads are horribly ugly anyway. So we petitioned the residents to say, we estimated it was about a $900 difference per property, and we were going to spread it out over 10 years, so it was really a minimal impact. And it was voted well in favor. So we put the power underground, and when all things were finalized, I believe that the actual difference came in at like $400 and some, and most of the residents just came in and paid it without payment plan. So we have used it successfully before for that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm reminded quite often on 11th Street, there's a resident that says, we paid for that street. How come trucks are using it? So they had a local improvement tax on 11th Street at one point. I'm not sure what stretch it was, but it was, you can tell you drive down that street, it's newer sidewalks and recently paved. Not recent, obviously, but it's newer asphalt rather than original, right? So, okay, so we have a question from administration for us on the 10th Street project.
Can I just ask one question
Yeah,
here?
for sure.
Your introduction of this issue at this stage was kind of well in advance of when we actually need to make this decision, and that's why I thought that there is time for us to flesh out and try to set some parameters for when we would consider a local improvement tax. And so, the discussion that's happened so far in my mind is a start on that kind of thing. And so I would hope that there's some time for us to really explore that and come up with those criteria, and then based on those criteria decide if or how we would apply that to this particular project and then the projects that would follow.
So is the question then kind of what timelines we're looking at? When do you need a firm answer? Can administration answer that?
So for local improvement, it's best practices if we're going to do a local improvement to get it out to the public well before we start the construction. So I was thinking sometime in 2026 because this is a 2027 project. So we have adequate time, but I just wanted if we're going to develop a policy and have further discussions, that's great, but I just wanted to start the conversation so that we were well prepared when this comes to capital budget in 2027 and it's being approved, and how are we financing and funding it? Thank you.
So could we defer a final decision on this, subject to getting a little bit more understanding of the projects, kind of the cost breakdowns for sidewalks, asphalt, deep services, because I think those are all going to play into our discussion in terms of even building a policy. And I think it's good to have a project that we can test it on, because there's a lot of things to test on a policy like that. Does that make sense? Council think that's worthwhile information, or some of it could be other communities, what they do, our size, not our size? Right.
Yeah, just, I think, given the time that we have, administration has to, prepare for this. I do think we need to look at them individually and then together, right? Like establish the policy, establish what it is that council would like to see going forward, right? What triggers specifically, obviously mentioned a couple times today. So I don't think it's impossible to begin that work. I think with council's direction that, that we are somewhat interested in local improvement taxes for big projects, I think that kind of gets us off in that direction, so then we can start working on a policy. And likewise, I'm not sure our timeline for more construction costs on the estimate for 10th Street specifically. But I'm sure one thing I guess I want to just mention is that in our policy, we'll probably have to have some sort of qualifier depending on the recipients or the potential recipients of that. For example, where, one street, I believe when I did the math, 9th Street pays on an average about $500 a year in property taxes, whereas opposed to, 30th pays an average of, I can't remember what that one was, a few $1,000s a year, right? And so just recognizing valuations and things like that, but we can work some kind of language into the policy so that it will be a good test to say, hey, how does this work with 10th Street? And then our policy can make sense and we can adjust it from there.
Councillor Patience?
And just if I might, and just to be clear, when we broached this subject originally, it was never proposed that we put a local improvement on replacing the underground and repaving the street. It really is our responsibility, I think, as a municipality to ensure that our utility systems are functioning properly, and if they're degraded to a point they need to be replaced. That probably should not be a local improvement tax. All I was specifically talking about was items that would be put in that aren't currently there. And so just so my perspective is clear that I am talking about the sidewalks. The curb will be installed regardless, both sides. And so this is, from my point of view anyway, we're talking about sidewalks, not local improvement taxes for the cost of the paving and the underground utilities.
Yeah, I think at the FCM, I went way back, Edmonton has a local improvement program that has really helped them to rehabilitate a lot of their neighborhoods way faster. If they want upgraded streetlights, for example, or if they want a different kind of sidewalk, or if they want trees, then those are all things. Yeah. So yeah, those are all things that we would include in such a discussion.
Exactly, and those are all the kind of things that it would be nice to have out in front of us so that when we've got a project and the question is, do we have a local improvement tax on this particular project? We've got a frame of reference that's been researched, and it's not a blind, or it's a less blind decision. So that's great discussion, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's areas that the town has made improvements on in the last number of years that probably could have used the local improvement tax because they bought the land with a certain value based on what they were getting to the land, whether it was paved streets or not paved streets, but now they have paved streets and it didn't cost them anything. So to some degree, I think it's, we have to be a little careful with some of these, and it's finding the right balance. So on the local improvement tax, no one's dead. Well, Councilor Monteith, you were dead set against it. Anyone else dead set against it? Councilor Poitras is torn.
Yeah, I'd say I lean more towards against it, but I do appreciate the conversations we've had and the utility of local improvement moving forward. So yeah, I agree with Councilor Orr that it would be nice to have that policy in place. And that just helps us and future council with these types of decisions, you know, instead of that case by case basis.
Sure.
Nope, here's the policy.
Councilor Fox, any thoughts on it?
There's a lot of thoughts rolling around in my head right now. I'm not really for or against it. I feel for some of the people who already can't afford to live, and now we're thinking about taxing them even more. But I do think it would be something that's good to get things done in a more timely manner that need to be done. But then I also think about when we talk about who's benefiting from certain things, and that's going to be kind of a project to project basis, but like 10th Street typically is just the people who live down there who are down there. But when I look at other streets, like say 26th Street, there's the hospital, the church, the park. It's not just the residents benefiting from something like that. So it's just little things like that that I'm thinking about.
No, good discussion.
And if I might, just for Councillor Fox's benefit, I don't disagree about forcing an LIT on somebody. That's why we would have to petition them and ensure that a strong majority of those residents were actually prepared to do that, to add the sidewalk at their expense. So just so everyone's clear that we wouldn't force this on residents that wouldn't want it.
And those would also be considerations in determining the amount of the levy. You know, if it's a street that only the local residents use, then that would be a consideration versus a street where others benefit from it, then maybe that levy would be lower on that kind of a project.
So on the 10th Street project, administration need any more feedback from us on that one for now? Oh, Councilor Monteith, sorry.
As I think about all the things that would come into having a policy, I'm not sure we're going to be any further ahead than doing it on a project by project basis, because you can't put in a policy every little different thing that to differentiate one neighborhood for another, one situation from another. So, you know, I think we're getting ourselves into a quagmire here, because I'm not looking forward to that discussion, because I don't think you can come up with a policy that makes it fair for everyone and covers all situations. I think project by project is the way to go.
Oh, fair enough. But like we have opportunity in front of us. I think at a minimum it would be a recommendation from administration on what a levy might look like on this project. But otherwise, I think some form of understanding of when council is going to consider or not consider. In broad terms, maybe it's not a policy. Maybe it's just high level. I'm not sure what it'd be called. But so that the community knows too, like how many people in our community actually know they could petition council for doing something in their neighborhood to improve something and what that would look like. So I think something that we can promote in the community and encourage people to utilize. It's kind of similar to the energy bylaw that we just did, right? So it's basically taking a project and putting it on your tax for the next 20 years. People so choose. It's the same idea. But on the 10th Street project, we'll have that discussion, but did you need any other feedback from us today? Is more just the local improvement tax? It's not whether or not we're going ahead with the project or the 50-50 splits between the pincher, and that's all kind of good to go for now.
Chris, where would that leave us, debenture and debt-wise, that project?
sorry. So Councillor Orr did request for me to kind of show you where we are sitting for debentures. So this was in our last year's financial statement. So as you can see, those are our 7 debentures. Currently, we pay about, in total, principal and interest, we pay about $876,000 a year towards those 7 debentures. We're well within our debt limit per our financial statements. I have that if council wants to see it also. So we have to explain to the government of Alberta how we're supporting these debenture payments. The bottom 2 is the 9th Street industrial and residential development that we did back in 2021. And that one in McLeod Landing are funded via land sales. There's a couple that are water treatment plant and water meter projects that we're supporting via utility rates, and the rest are supported via general tax levies. So currently we pay about $877,000 a year for those debentures. And so these 2 new projects would add the additional 3.5 million to our debenture total. So one of them should be supported by land sales because it's the final phase of McLeod Landing. So we would recover that via our land sales. And the other one would be supported, the 10th Street one would be supported by general tax levies. So it just kind of flows out every year. Currently, we pay about $876,000 and a couple, and one of them drops off over the next few years. But we will be adding 2 next year based on our initial discussions with council on these 2 capital projects.
And that's 3.5 million over how many years? 15, 20?
We have that council debt management policy I usually refer to. I usually run the numbers for 15, 20, and 25 years, but I find that when you get into the 20, 25 years, the amount of interest that we pay is unreasonable. It's very high. So I try to bring 3 scenarios to council, and we discuss it and we talk about it. And if we can pull it back to like a 15-year payment, then that's far better for us, because we still have some riverbank erosion projects that we're paying for that we should have paid for years ago, but they were like 30-year projects. And I like a 15-year project, but that's just me and my tendency to try to pay off and not pay so much interest to the government of Alberta.
Conservation.
Yeah, thanks for all that. Actually, what I was wondering was the total amount of debt and total amount of reserves post-project.
Yeah, this is just the principal and interest, these ones here, right?
I'm just curious, will it leave us with 9 million in
I
debt?
think that was the report that we had from Avail too, that had it in there.
Yeah, so there's where we sit right now for our debt. So we're sitting at our limit is $21 million, and we try to normalize that by taking out land sales because that's too volatile for any comfort level for administration. And we're currently sitting at about $7.6 million. So we would add $3.5 million to our debt. And we're well within our debt servicing limit too for paying the interest and the principal. But we have saved up for that 10th Street project. We have saved up based on what we've allocated this year to go into that reserve from operations. Our $2 million of that project is fully funded at the end of this year. It's the McLeod Landing one that's the next one on the discussion item.
So we'll increase our debt by 2 million, decrease our reserves by 2 million. So what totals will that leave us, just rough?
I think when I did the estimation and showed it to council, by the end of this year, if we use that entire $2 million, we'll be at about oh, see, now I want to say $6 million in reserves, but that includes operating and capital.
Okay.
And that includes the $1 million in the land sales management account that
Yep.
I'm asking if we want to fund the McLeod Landing Phase 3 out of that.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah, I think we can get it probably
I know
in
she's
one
given it
document,
to
yeah.
us before. I was just
Yeah.
curious while we were having a conversation. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, so I think 10th, are we good on 10th for now? Everyone's good on 10th, no other questions on 10th? We can then move on to McLeod Landing Phase 3. Similar situation, not a local improvement tax discussion. I think an equivalent to that would be an offsite levy that the cities often use, right? So you can fund some of the infrastructure that way, but Jim would love to have that discussion, I'm pretty sure. But it's good to maybe pull up that report that was done back then. I don't know if we can get that sent to all the council again. It's good to review. Yeah, the one the MP did, and they did the whole study about what the costs were. I think new councillors, and I don't think previous council even had too much size on that one. So just thought, not something that we need to necessarily consider right now, but at least I think there was good information in it. But regarding McLeod Landing Phase 3, it's a 50-50. Maybe I'll ask Chris to introduce this one for us.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. So this one's a little bit different because this is new development, bare land development within the town of Fort McLeod. And normally this is, we like to fund new development from land sales. So I don't have any reserve funding specifically allocated to this Phase 3 for McLeod Landing within the reserves currently. But we do have that $1 million that we allocated into land sales management reserve out of last year's surplus. And we could potentially use that 2020, that $1 million plus $500,000 of our potential 2026 surplus allocation to fund 50% of that project. So just conceptually, I'm wondering if council is okay with that kind of a idea.
Do we have an estimated land revenue from Phase 3? Trying to remember. We had some numbers on that.
Yeah, there's definitely more inland sales for Phase 3. What we really need to take a look at is I guess, McLeod Landing as a whole. But with the addition of those, I guess it is 8 residential lots. So we'd anticipate probably around 2.3 million minimum to take on the residential lots. And then whatever we sell the senior lot for, which the whole piece appraised at like close to $1 million, but we've shrunk it a little bit. So maybe you get 750 from that. And then you have your multi-unit parcel, which we don't have priced out yet, but it's got some decent size. So, at least 400,000 there. And so with the expected price of just Phase 3, like we have far greater revenues to come in, but that's, we're not building a new storm pond and all the other infrastructure that went into Phase 1 and 2. But yeah, there will be the cash flow to pay off the debenture and to recoup our reserve for McLeod Landing Phase 3.
Okay. The feedback, I think you're looking just for feedback now, how much we use through debenture. Is that primary ask for today?
Yes, so I guess 50-50, and maybe it'll be coming out of the capital reserves anyway, even if it's via land sales profits that flow into the reserve. Or if we just want to try to fund it via land sales from that phase or that project. I just don't know because I have to write a debenture bylaw for each of these. So I'm just trying to get ahead of it, sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Councillor Monteith?
Doesn't really matter, because if we empty a reserve and then we pump it back in when we sell, is no different than funding it and getting the money as we sell a lot. So I don't think it really matters. We're going to end up in the same position down the line.
Short of interest cost?
Ability to repay the debenture, right? So, yeah, the less we have to borrow, the better, I think is realistic.
Yeah, so say we debenture 50% and we sell all the land, then we're sitting on technically a replenished reserve of 1.5 million, which we can then use for the next projects. But either way, you would be able to do that, so.
I'm not quite sure what Councillor Patience was saying, because I was basically saying we don't borrow, because we use reserves, we fill them back up, we don't need to borrow. Like, I don't think we want to put a debenture on this, get our land sales, and then pay the debenture off over the next 20 years. That doesn't make sense.
I think that's what Councillor Patience was saying.
That was exactly my point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the less debenture, the better, because repayment, even in lump sums, obviously is challenging and is problematic. As long as we have a strategy to pay the infrastructure costs with land sales, then the sooner we sell the land, the quicker we can pay it off and less risk we have in with the debenture. If we've got reserves to cover it and land sales look very solid, you can probably minimize their debenture, or at least set up a reserve that makes the debenture payments so that we're not using it for something else and then taxing for the payment of that debenture.
Just a question, Chris, what's the difference between our cost of the debenture and the return on investments that we can get? What's the spread between those two interest rates, typically? Debenture interest rate is what, and what typically are you getting on our reserves funds?
I think the last debenture that we took out, I'd have to check the interest rates because things have probably fallen since the last time we took out a debenture, but it was about 6%. And I think we probably, yeah, I'm not even sure. I'd have to, they're long-term AAA bonds, so I'd have to go check. It's in our financials, but I just don't recall. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure the spread's in our favor for investments versus debt, but I'd have to double check.
And of course, why that's relevant, given the conversation here, is which is cheaper money. If the debenture is cheaper money and we can get returns on our reserves that are greater than the cost of the debenture, then it's better to.
I don't think the debenture is cheaper money.
Well, this is what
I'd
I'm-
bid on it.
This is what I'm asking.
I think we'd be lucky to get 2-3% on the money, and we're paying 5 or 6, so
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's why I'm asking it.
Okay, so on this one, council would be leaning more to self-finance the entire thing, is that what I'm hearing? Are we able to debenture, say, 2 years down the road after the project's done? I don't think that really works, eh?
That might be dependent upon pre-sales. If we can have enough pre-sales, you don't want to risk drying out your reserves either and having to carry them for a long period of time, so.
You could debenture more of a subsequent project if the sales are slower than you might have anticipated. So I think you can work around it.
So right now, the sense we get from council is to finance the entire McLeod Landing through reserves. Does that scare our director of finance? No? Yeah. So is that all you needed from us on this one? All right, well, and McLeod Landing is still being this tender this year? Third phase 3?
So I can talk a little bit to that. So we are still working with our engineers. Some of the longer lead time things like the year long for shallow utilities, they're already reaching out and trying to get people kind of invested in that as they're finalizing the drawings. So there are some steps being taken. We have requested that we have firm drawings and things that we can go to, potentially even starting deep utilities by the end of this year. So that's what we're pushing towards, is to have those drawings and the ability to do some of that work this year. So we'll obviously have to talk about that again as we get to that point, but that's what we're pushing on so that we have the information we need to finalize things and get it in the budget for 2027.
Anything else on these two projects? Seeing none, we'll move on to fee schedule. And our Director of Community Services would like to speak to this one. Thank you.
Thanks, and good afternoon, Council. So typically every 3 years, we bring the full fee schedule back. This year, because of our facility foreman's participation in a regional group, we're only bringing a couple that that we see as needing some more immediate changes, just so that if we do work towards those regional pricing comparables, that they aren't seen as such a steep increase if we're really low or high, what that variable can be between all of them. So today we're asking to adjust the arena rates for the winter season, Scouts Hall rates, and then some discussion and is needed for some of the pool rates. And we just noticed this year that our swimming lesson rates have actually never been on the fee schedule, even though we've offered them for many, many years. And so we've added the swimming lessons to the fee schedule this year. And so we'd like to make sure that those are part of this discussion as well and discuss then. For the arena rates, we typically do just that minimal $5 per hour increase in rate. And again, that happens every 3 years. This is the start of that 3rd year cycle. So we know that we're pretty close in the region, in the area for ice rates without comparing to our larger centers. But towns and communities that are approximately our size, we're pretty close. And then for the Scouts Hall, we have a little bit of increase there. Scouts Hall is probably one of our busiest rental facilities that we have. The usage for it outweighs the community hall quite a bit. It would see minimum 50% usage almost every month, and almost every day of every weekend is booked in that Scouts Hall. Typically, it's used for birthdays, baby showers, wedding showers, family suppers, gatherings, and then we also have some training sessions and such that are done in there, first aid courses, job fairs, petition signings, all of those sorts of things have happened in this building. And I do believe that one of the reasons that we do get good usage in that is because our fees are very low. For the type of usage. It typically does not get a double rental, so even if they are doing that minimum rental of 4 hours or less, usually that rental is in a time period that you don't typically have a morning rental and an afternoon rental. It kind of overlaps, and so you won't typically get a second rental in on that same day. So that's part of the reason that we'd like to increase that under 4 hour rental, just because it is our biggest use, and that's the one that gets booked the most, is that under 4 hour rental. But it doesn't take any less time administratively to administer that rental, to work with that renter, to do the policies, the insurance, anything extra that's required for that. And then the cleaning cost is the same for all of them, as it's that building is maintained about once a week, that the cleaner goes in and takes care of it and then stocks up everything prior to those rentals. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the Scouts Hall. When it comes to the pool, we're looking at keeping most of the admission costs the same. The one that we would like to just kind of point out is the rental hourly rates. So these are the private rentals where you have a group rental. The numbers of people has been adjusted. Tice can speak a little bit to that, but there used to be, up to 50 people, and what those rates are, we're looking to keep the same. We're just looking to add that one little one or the big one for 141 to 200 people, and add that rental rate. And then the two that we'd like a little bit of discussion on, and again, I'll let Tice speak a little bit to these, is the fitness and lane swim, and then the private lesson costs for swimming lessons. So I'll give Tice just the opportunity to speak a little to those, and then I'm happy to have any questions and conversation with council after that.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so when we started looking at all the rates around Southern Alberta, there was a group in Coaldale that kind of made the initiative to invite most of the municipalities and bigger cities from Southern Alberta and just have a big discussion on fees. And so right now we're working as part of this group to look at all the fees in Southern Alberta and kind of see where we sit. Southern Alberta seems to be quite a bit lower than Central and throughout Canada, but we're sitting a bit low. So that's why this initiative first came in from Coaldale. So like Lisa mentioned, we're not quite there yet. We're still comparing all the numbers for this regional group. So we only want to do it 1 year to kind of align us closer to where the averages are right now. And then going forward, once we got all the numbers from the regional group, we would implement those or, take a closer look at where we sit. One of the reasons why we did up to 40 people instead of up to 50 people is because that aligns with the lifeguard ratio. So one lifeguard is allowed to have 40 bathers in the swimming pool. So that's the reason why we changed it to 40 instead of 50. The aquafit and lane swim rates. So once we started looking at all these fees and having these discussions, I quickly realized that Fort Macleod is one of the only swimming pools in this area that still does lane swim rates and aquafit rates. Most municipalities and cities have now done just a drop-in rate or a public swim rate, which is based off of age. So if a adult 18 to 54 went swimming, it would be that rate, no matter, regardless of if it's a public swim, a aquafit, or a lane swim. And same with youth and any of the other ages. So the discussion piece of that one would be to kind of eliminate that rate or just change them the same way as our general admission. One of the biggest pieces that we seen too when we started looking into this was our private lessons. This one's a little bit confusing because some municipalities do a week long like us, and those are mostly the summer pools, the outdoor pools. So they do a week-long lesson set, and then other municipalities do a 30-minute set, which is the same that we do, but some of them are based off a 30-minute rate, and some of them are based off of a weekly rate. So I took our $60 and I made it a week or a 30-minute session just to compare averages. So we're sitting at $12 for the 30 minutes a session. And the average in Southern Alberta, not Southern Alberta, but the towns that I compared to, is sitting at 43. So my suggestion is to get it a little bit closer. Of course, I don't think it'd be reasonable to go from $60 to the 210, which is the average right now. But what my suggestion would be is to go from the 60 to 120, which means about $24 a session, 30-minute session. I think that's about it.
Yeah, those are that one and the lane swim one. So just kind of, yeah, again, reiterating that we can make that just a regular admission charge. And then because of the potential steep increase to the private lesson, we just wanted to also make sure that we had that conversation with council, and we need to get closer to that rate, definitely in the region, and we'll see that especially next year when we have all of those numbers in front of us. It will also be shared with council, and we're trying to eliminate that super steep increase again when we see those numbers. So that's kind of where we're coming from, but we can certainly have more discussion and questions.
That's good. So maybe we'll start back up at the top just to flow through it. Any concerns with the arena or Scouts Hall? There's some changes there. They're all.
I would just, with respect to the Scout Hall, I'm really pleased to hear that it's being used as much as it is. And I like the idea of keeping our fees very reasonable there so that it is a space that our community can use. So I'm fine with what you're proposing, but let's make sure we keep those fees very usable for families.
We don't see a problem with jumping from 100 to 125. It shouldn't be an issue.
Not really. The renters that are using that are typically the training sessions that are business oriented and not very often used for those family small-ish kind of gatherings. So no, I don't anticipate that. That's one that's, if it's used, once or twice a month, I'd kind of be surprised. But it is more that 4-hour rental that does take up the time administratively to take care of. So that's more the one that I'm more concerned about, just making sure that we're cognizant of that, but still keeping that at a reasonable rate.
Okay. Councillor Butchers.
Yeah, just a quick question about the Scouts Hall. With your rental parameters here, with the under 4 hours, over 4 hours and stuff, does that work for you, or would it be more simple to do just a set by hour rental? I'm just
Sure,
so
yeah, it's a
confused on
great
that.
question. We do get that, they don't want to pay the $100. They're not going to be there for 8 hours, but they want to be there a little more than 4 hours in order to set up or clean up or whatever. And so they're also, cognizant of that. And that's kind of just why we've kept it, is because there is some use for it. Again, it is that 4-hour rental that mostly gets used. But yeah, there have been the asks for not the full day, but more than 4 hours.
Okay, very good. And then the swimming pool rates look like they're staying the same. The only one was the extra hourly rental. The seniors 55 plus for punch passes. Is that a mistake?
Yeah,
Or is
that's
that
not,
accurate?
that math isn't very good. I have that noted because it doesn't add up to the cost of 9 daily passes now.
It looks like it jumped from 49.50 to 58.50, even though, so the seniors are taking a hit.
Yes, if we're not changing the daily rate or the general admission, we need to maintain that 49.50 for seniors.
I think that's typo. I would have to guess, because it's listed as green, so there's no changes proposed. Pool season's good, fitness and lane swim. I think your recommendation on that makes sense, Councillor Patience.
Yeah, so the potential to make regular admission charges for lane and fitness swims, I'm 100% on board with. But I'm not on board with the increase in swimming lessons. I think we should be promoting swimming lessons for our small kids and young people. I think that's a life skill that's ultra important. And I don't know how people already knew this, but I've already had people phoning me going, why are you jacking up the swimming lesson rates? I got 3 kids and I cannot afford that. So I don't know how people knew this because I didn't. So, but it's indicative of the fact, I think, that a lot of households are under some financial stress, and we know the cost of everything's going through the roof. So I'd be a strong proponent to maintain those rates from the previous year, because I think it's important that our kids, and when we look at Little League Diamonds, et cetera, those youth things are typically free. I don't see why swimming lessons for little kids shouldn't at least have acknowledgement of minimizing those expenses for parents. So I think 35 and 40 is reasonable, and I don't think we should be putting any more pressure. In fact, I think we should be promoting all of our kids to take swimming lessons, because it is not just a recreation, it's a life skill.
I think those are fair comments, but I think what's been presented is more where every other community is at as well. Like, we're very low, and the skill that goes into swimming lessons is big. I see huge value in it, but yeah, I can understand where some it's difficult for some. So anyone else have any thoughts on that? Councillor Butchers?
I think Lisa had mentioned this in a conversation where due to our low fees in swimming lessons, we actually attract out-of-town families coming in. And so that, again, potentially limits or makes it unavailable to our families here in town. But no, I do agree. Yeah, swimming is great. It's a great skill for those kids to learn. Again, it's something that does require an instructor that has to be trained to offer those things. And so there's cost in paying that instructor as well. So I'm okay with a small increase here.
Well, fair enough, and I understand that, and I don't want to see it shooting out of town rates. That gets really messy and doesn't impress people much. But to raise parent and taught preschool and swimmer 1-2 rates by 30%, I think is just way too much.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I had a comment. I wanted to go back to the fitness and lane swim. I don't want to interrupt or stop the swimming lesson discussion if we need to do that further. I tend to agree that parents and taught preschool swimmer 1-2, $10 increase it's a jump, but I appreciate the other comments made. The fitness and lane swim, if I could just speak to that, I think I would be opposed to bringing that up to the general admission amount. If you look at those two things, those are individuals typically that are going multiple times per week. They're there for a half hour, maybe an hour. Those who do the aquafit classes, again, they're not using all the amenities of the pool. They're there for a shorter period of time. It's an exercise endeavor. If they're going multiple times per week for that exercise, $1.50 increase, if we're looking just at that, no, it would be more than that. That over the week is quite a substantial increase for them. And it is at a time when there is time allotted for that lane swim, and so we'd like to encourage people to exercise. I think that's a category worth keeping, and keeping at a lower rate than your general admission.
Okay. Anyone want to ask you over that?
I have a question for Tice. I don't know these numbers. How is our lane swim, like participants, like what are we seeing in our lane swim? Because I know there was once a comment about whether it was just the early morning lane swim, staffing lane swim can be a bit of a challenge when one person shows up when we have 2 or 3 lifeguards on duty. But yeah, what do our numbers look like for lane swim?
They make up about 1% of revenue and 2% of usage. That's both lane swim and aquafit together. And I can give you the full numbers too, but I don't have those numbers with me. But that's what it comes down to. And,
Are those offered daily, or just what's the offering on each of those in terms of the schedule?
I don't have the schedule for me, but yeah, that's multiple times a week.
Yeah, I assumed multiple times per week.
Is there oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just for Sean patients, we do have, just for information, the average swimming lesson across 9 municipalities that are our size is $50. So that's why we have those outside community groups coming to us, because there's quite a bit of savings.
Thanks, Dice. I appreciate that. I guess my point really is, I just think that's too much of a jump at one time if you have little kids. And I know I got 2 little grandkids, and some parents are struggling right now with cost of fuel and everything going through the roof. It's
Can we
getting challenging.
split the rate for out-of-towners?
I guess if it was 40 and 45 instead of 45 and 45, I could live with a $5 increase. But those little kids, like I've been many times, right? I think it's important that they get to take it. I hate to see the funding, and I get that we get people from out of town. Do we actually make money on it, Tice? Like with the instructors and their registration fees? Do we aside from the cost of the swimming pool, I mean?
I don't think recreation ever makes money.
You know what I mean, though. We're not losing money by hiring a person to provide the lesson. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I understand there's this whole multi-million-dollar swimming pool that has to be paid for and the utilities, et cetera. But anyway, I guess I understand the argument. So I guess I would propose that for the parent and taught preschool swimmer 1-2, instead of 45, to put it to 40, and that way both see a $5 increase, and we maybe can slowly work at that. But that's one of the largest increases on here, and that's the littlest kids that are involved, and that doesn't sit well with me.
If I could just speak to a little bit of why we're trying to actually just have our swimming lessons for those age groups, the parent and taught, all the way up to the swimmer 6, just be the same price across the board, so that all swimming lessons for that, rather than the specialized ones that you need to move up into your lifeguarding session. So that's where we were kind of coming from, is to just try and just get swimming lessons at a uniform rate across the board, regardless of which session or level you were trying for. And then just to note, Miranda was able to pull up the August schedule from last year for lane swim. And that was in the mornings from Monday to Friday. And then there was also the afternoon Monday to Friday one with the family swim. And then they have the evening session 5:30 to 7, where those are typically in there as well, the Monday to Friday, with basically the weekends outside of that lane swim section and the family swim. Weekends don't typically have as much. And some days there'd be nobody showing up, and some days there'd be, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So it's never one of the most well-attended, but it's one that people do ask for.
I've been curious, like when lane swim, does it have to be that everything else can't be used during lane swim? Like you have a kiddie pool and the water slides?
And that is
like...
kind of why they did opt to start doing it during the family swim section as well, is because that deeper end of the pool or whatever, you have to have a parent in the water with the kids for that family swim, and so you don't see that same usage of the pool during family swim. So that's part of the reason why they included it in that session as well.
I guess it's just a lane swim that's by itself now. Councilor Fox.
Also for lane swim for the evening, the 5:30 to 7, swim club usually takes up 3 to 4 lanes, so the pool isn't empty.
So back to fitness and lane swim. Where's council at on that? Do we group it together or leave it as it is? Does it matter to us? Too much? Too little?
I don't know that should be the final
Yeah.
decision makers on this. You've heard our input and those kind of things. I think they're factors to consider, but I don't know that it's a matter for a motion.
And then the only other one is private lesson, any level. I think that's, I think there's discussion on that because you have one person for all week with one instructor. That's a pretty specialized training. So I see no reason why that couldn't be raised. Like if someone wants to invest private lesson. Councilor Fox?
I do agree with you on that, but at the same time too, if you don't get on 30 seconds after lessons open, sometimes you can't get into anything but private lessons. So you don't really have a choice sometimes.
Can they change a private lesson and to share it with 2 or 3 people?
Actually, yeah, Tice can speak to that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can add multiple people, usually family members if siblings that are close in age, will be able to do one lesson, and depending on the age group and especially the older ones, they'll be able to do a couple different lessons in that one set. So you can actually complete multiple swimming courses in 1 week. So that's kind of the benefit of a private. If they have the ability to advance that much in 1 week, they can essentially finish their swimmer 1 all the way to swimmer 4, depending on their ability, I guess.
So I definitely think the rate needs to go up from 60. Whatever you decide on that, I don't know. You suggested 120 was the suggestion?
That's what Tice recommended, yes.
And Councillor Monteith?
I agree with Councillor Fox that the demand on swimming lessons is unreal. So if you don't get in right away, you don't get in. Is there any way we can offer them more often?
So in the last couple of years, we have increased swimming lessons. Just for some background information, in the last year, we won record under 30. Sorry, I can't remember the exact number, but the town in a certain size from the town, I believe it was 5,000 and under. We won gold and silver for how many lessons we were able to provide. So the amount of lessons we do provide in this area is a lot. Like I said, we're winning records. And we are adding more, and we're adding some night ones too. But it doesn't seem to matter. Almost every year we sell out. So we are working on it, but it's one of those things that right now it's just there's a huge demand.
So back to the private lesson, Councillor Fox, did you have any suggestion on what that? Because I could see if there's 3 or 4 people that can still join a private lesson, it's got to be more than $60.
No, I do agree with that. As long as the public is aware that they can put more than one person in a private lesson,
Sure.
then I think they're more than willing to pay that. But
Okay.
just if it was for one kid, I know there was a couple times I had to put my kids in private because there was nothing else available.
Sure. Okay. Does that give you both enough feedback to work with, or is there any other hard feedback you need from us before you take it away?
Just like to ask if council are they sure they don't want to actually just tell us what the price they want for those couple? Whether we, hold at the 40 or the 45 for the swimming lessons, and then the increased level for the private lesson. I think because those are a little bit
Sensitive?
yes, and impactful to a large number of community members. I think it would help us if council was more.
Well, could we do private lesson then, if it's one, it's a little hard. If it's private lesson, it's private lesson, right? So I'm of the opinion private lesson would go as per your recommendation, but I don't know where else, council, as long as it's advertised as such, that they can add more than one person to that.
On that note, when you add an extra person, the fee does go up for privates.
Oh, what is that extra?
I would have to look that up.
Okay, that makes a difference, but if there's already going up, then maybe we don't need to, but I don't know.
So how many days a week are lessons? Just so I know, 5? So
Typically
you're
5.
telling me that somebody's gonna drive from Lethbridge 5 times to save $10? I don't understand.
No,
that.
a lot of times people plan their family vacations around it. Their grandkids will come into town, stay, and go for swimming lessons while they're here, or they're at the campgrounds,
It's
or
economic development, isn't it?
no question, yeah, it does.
You know,
But yeah, they're out of town guests that are
yeah.
very much enjoy outdoor lessons too. Like where else can
But
you
no,
do that?
fair enough. Well, I'd be happy with $5 each on those, honestly, and the privates I'm fine with what.
So 120 on private and $5 on the parent and tot and swimmer 3.6, and rookie ranger stays the same. And then fitness and lane swim. Any suggestions on that? Like I think if aqua and fitness is in with the other grouping, maybe aqua and fitness would be merged in with the other one, but lane swim could be kept separate. I don't know. Does that make sense, or does it matter? Because lane swim is strictly 1 hour limit, right? Yeah, you're only 1 hour. So whereas general swimming can be.
Sorry, Miranda, can you pull up the actual schedule? For in August, the lane swim was available from 6:30 till 9 a.m. So that's the one that I see as being the longest. And then it's 5:30 till 7 in the evening, but again, that one's shared with the swim club, so there is some additional use. So just so that you're aware of the actual. I don't think somebody is staying and doing lane swim for 2.5 hours. That's a long time to do lane swim.
And we're not competing with the general public either, right? It's not like families are sitting at the door waiting to come in at 6:30 in the morning.
And lane swim and aquafit, they're covered under the season passes that people get to. And-
Correct.
And you can use your 10 punch pass for those time
Correct.
slots as well?
Yep.
Okay. So there are some options there for saving some money if you are a lane swimmer.
Yeah, I don't know on that one, honestly. Leave fitness and lane swim in or pull it out.
My initial thought was that I was okay with making it the same as regular admission. Yeah. I appreciate Councillor Orr's thoughts on it.
550 to drop in for a lane swim. It's that, or if you're going enough times, you get a season pass, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll merge those in. Swimming lessons. We've had that discussion. Anything else on any of this? So we won't get feedback that we're, what was the word you used, Councillor Patience? That we were increasing the rates by how much? All right, if that's all, then we're good. And that's all for today. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.